Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, Brandon, well, it's good to talk to you again. We took a little bit of an unplanned break in the action last week because I was on the DL. I was a little sick. Don't know what exactly it was, but it was enough that we were like, man, we just can't get this done. And it's a shame because we have, and he's coming up on, but we have Alan Jaeger who's going to be joining us, which we're so excited about that. We've been trying to get Alan on the show for a while. And so when Jeremy Sheetinger, who was on our show a few weeks ago, offered Alan up as somebody that, he could put us in touch with, we were all over that. And Alan was really great and kind to say.
Oh, for sure. And dude, you may or may not know, but when I reached out to him and just said, hey, Alan, look, John's like really sick and he's going to go to the ER. We think it may be food poisoning. Or, whatever.
Yeah.
He texted me 2 or 3 times, like, is John okay? He was very engaging. So I'm super excited to have him on, but he's going to have to wait because we have tonight, like, your guys, right? This is right down the John Cullen.
It's part of the memory
That's right. Kind of thing. And I'm excited. I think the listeners will be excited to hear from, some really good coaches that have really unique perspectives and coach in a challenging environment, literally a challenging environment with the weather and all that kind of stuff, but the mental aspect as well. So I'm excited.
No, absolutely. So what Brandon's referring to there is Garrett College, which when I went to school there was GCC. It was Garrett Community College, was a JUCO up in Maryland, part of that Maryland JUCO, which I tell people was some of the best baseball I ever played. Was in that league because you had, the thing about junior college baseball that a lot of people don't get is that you've got a lot of kids that if they've decided out of high school, hey, I don't want to go 3 years and then get an opportunity to be drafted. They think that they're just a year away from it. They'll go to a junior college for a year because you can get drafted right away. But so from Garrett College, we've got on the show tonight Phil Caruso, who was there from 1980 through 1985, and then Lawrence Nesselrodt, who was there from 1985 to 1994, so right after Phil. And then we have Ed Wildesen, who was there from 1994 to 2003, and then Eric Hallenbeck, who is the current coach who has been there from 2003 to the present. And 3 Hall of Famers, Brandon. 3 of those guys are already Garrett College Hall of Fame coaches. And, just as you said, it's a really interesting discussion because they talk about the fact of all the elements in the environment, environmental challenges, but then just also some of the challenges just being at a junior college and, having to develop those relationships early on.
For sure. And let's not sell number 4 real short, because I'm sure that he will be joining the crew in the Garrett Hall of Fame. So it is an interesting it's different. And I think the listeners will like to hear, it is definitely an accelerated, both for the player and the coach. It's kind of an accelerated pathway, both relationally, what you have to do from a maturity standpoint and a mental health standpoint. So I think the listeners are going to really enjoy this one.
Absolutely. All right, welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Brandon, it seems like we've had a run here of some baseball. Real strange, right? That we both played baseball, that we'd have always gravitate back towards that. But, a couple of weeks ago, we had Coach Ralph Cibiteri on, who, of course, was our coach at the College of Charleston. And now tonight, I'm really, really fired up for this one. This is, as you know, or a lot of our listeners know, I went to Garrett College. At the time was Garrett Community College, a JUCO in Maryland before I went to the College of Charleston. Played for Lawrence Nesselrodt, who you guys have heard me mention on the show before. And it was a really great experience, great 2 years of my life. It's up in McHenry, Maryland. It's a little bit cold. You'll hear that talked about, I'm sure, tonight on the show. But we have a really cool, opportunity tonight in that we have 4 of the head coaches that have been head coaches at Garrett College on the show. So we're really looking forward to that. We've got Ed Wildesen, Bill Caruso, Eric Hallenbeck, and, of course, Lawrence Nesselrodt. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to get kind of right into this because I know when we have 4 people on, this is going to be lots to share tonight. But we really wanted to have you guys on the show and talk a little bit about just those unique challenges. Brandon and I talk all the time about building programs and developing that right culture for a program. But before we kind of get into that, I want to start with you, Phil, because, you started out, was it 1980 or 79 when was your first year at Garrett?
1980. The program was dormant for 2 years.
Okay. So then you came on board. What was the draw? How did that all kind of take shape as far as you getting to Garrett?
Well, I was his phys ed teacher in the county, married, and wanted to try to get into coaching somehow. There's 2 high schools in the county, and then I didn't know that I coached at Northern for a while, for a year, and I just thought, I like to see, that I knew that Garrett had a program at one time. I was young and dumb, 28 years old. I thought maybe it's a great idea to start a program again. And little did I know how young and dumb I was to try to get that going. Well, right next door to me was one of the board of directors where I lived. And I bounced the idea off of her. She said, put a proposal together and we'll put it to account with at the board meeting to see if we can bring baseball back. So I did some research why they shut it down and what they need to try to bring it back. And I guess at the time, baseball was overemphasized, they thought. I'm talking about the board of directors as far as too many games. So I cut that down a little bit and told the advantage of bringing baseball back to college is still growing. And I think Garrett started in 1972, I think. So it's still growing. So I sold that. I was young. I had no assistant coaches. I just thought it was a great idea to try to start, baseball back at Garrett. So it was passed. And unfortunately, my AD was the former head coach. He put the first year together with 2 of the guys are on this broadcast right here. They could tell it was one hell of a schedule we put together. So we were 4-21, and then 2 of them were forfeit. So we're really 2-21. So it was
4-21. They all count.
That's right.
4-21. Yeah. So, it's kind of funny, but, one of the stories, we came back from Frederick that night. And there's as we're taking back equipment, it's late, 11 o'clock at night, there's a message on the door there. And we're getting excited. Of course, tomorrow we're going to play Howard Community College, who not won a game. So we're really excited about them coming in, playing a doubleheader against them and beating up some batting average. And the message from our AD was, Howard forfeited. I'll see you on Monday.
Yes. Streak.
We all wrote ourselves down as having 5 hits that day.
That's right, of course. Yeah. That's so funny. Well,
anyway, that's how the program got started, and I did have a former, not a teammate, but a friend of mine who's our pitching coach, an incredible pitching coach that actually, when you look at the scores of that year against the competition, we more than overachieved, even to lose 5-3. and we played some national ranked teams. Just last week, someone said, "You know a guy named Jim Hooten?" Someone came up to me. I said, "Yes, I do. He's the best pitcher we had that first year. He went home." but he was a special talent, and he remembers his days at Garrett for 1 year. Speaks very highly of his 1 year at Garrett. So we got it going, and the guys that are here today who played for me, they took it up another notch after I left. I was there 5 years.
It's really interesting to see this connection. You mentioned that, Phil, that, Lawrence played for you on that first team. Ed was on that first team. And, in the cross section between the four of you all, as I was doing some research on this, I mean, of course, knowing a lot of you for a long time now, but the Frostburg State connection, both as coaches and Eric playing there, Ed going on and playing there. So, I mean, it's really interesting to see that whole dynamic kind of play itself out. I mean, you spent, and I should have mentioned this, over 40 years coaching baseball, most recently at Fairmont State, just retired this last year. And, started that program, led that program in just, I guess it would have been 5 years, 6 years to 4 postseason regional bids, which is outstanding. So they didn't beat up on you long, right? I mean, you might have gotten, that first year of the 4 wins, but you guys made up for it pretty quickly.
Hot State folded the program after 1980. Okay. Mm-hmm. Johnny Crook was a member of that team, good friends with Lawrence, back then. And, the coach at Pot State, when they folded the program, and they were at the peak of the program when they folded, they were about to go to World Series and lost to a championship game in the region to go to the World Series. And the power of the presidents and board of directors pull the plug like they did at Garrett. They pulled the plug on Pot State. Well, we got about 5, 6 of those guys to come up to Garrett the next year. All of a sudden, we got credibility right away. Yeah. Like we were in 1 year. That 4-21, you're like, whatever happened to those guys, they can play.
Yeah,
we could see that in the fall that year. That these guys could tell you in the fall that we were pretty good. So in 1 year, by working hard and the fact that Pot State folded program, Jack Reynolds didn't want their kids to go to Allegheny because he hated them.
Yeah,
so they came to Garrett. And what better time to recruit you Garrett during the summertime?
That's exactly right.
You go in Deep Creek Lake and you Honey, and we had a hell of a recruiting year that year at that summer. So, we were blessed to get the program going in the right direction and going into to play playoff caliber baseball in the next 4 years. We did. So that was good.
Ed, Lawrence, what do you guys remember about those teams?
Well, I think, Ed, if I could jump in, I think a good way to run through this as quickly as possible. But because we could sit here and talk baseball all night. You got this group together, and we really appreciate you highlighting a program that means a lot to all of us. But Phil's being very humble. I mean, he basically, I can still remember using his little white Mustang as a backstop at one point that we were taking batting practice. Now we did put up one of those blue mats up against it, so it was. But I mean, he really made something out of nothing, and I think Ed and I could attest to that from the standpoint. In 1976, I was lucky enough at Petersburg High School. We played for a state championship. Pro Scout came to our high school and did a pro style workout, and basically said, if you guys want to play college baseball or professional baseball, you need to be playing in the summertime. Well, there was no baseball in Petersburg, but as good Lord's grace would have it, Phil came down, and not only did he restart the program at Garrett, he first started American Legion baseball at Garrett County, and Ed and I were a part of that team, and so that was really the creation of the passion for baseball there. And we can't let this podcast go without, when we talk Garrett County baseball, you got to talk Terry Hallenbeck. He was
true.
The guy still is the driving force that keeps the Penmar baseball alive, which is also a league that we all participated in, and many people. Bottom line, Phil was unbelievable. He came from the Bronx, so a little New York City guy in Garrett County was wild enough, but he just happened to be passionate about baseball, and he hooked up with Terry Hallenbeck, and the fruits of their labor is being shown right now. I'll let Ed and Eric talk more about that, but basically, that was what, 77, I think, summer of 78 when we started American Legion Baseball.
Yeah, first year Legion ball.
77. And, so I actually, out of high school, I played American Legion Baseball for Phil, went on to Potomac State, was there for 1 year. And then that's the same year that Phil talked him into restarting baseball. And again, as much as Terry Hallenbeck has meant to baseball in Garrett County, the guy that really started this program at Garrett was a guy named Denny Fierno, who basically was the first athletic director. He was the first basketball coach. He was the first baseball coach, and had, I think a 6-year run from 72, 73 to 77, 78 was his final year. And, he won. He was 23-4 his third year. First year he was 0-4, 9-6 the second year, 23-4, and then 32 wins, 31 wins, 27-9 the final year, and then they dropped the program. And Phil, he had great vision for the game of baseball, and I don't think none of us envisioned what's going on there right now with what Eric has done program, as well as the Penmar team, as well, and also the American Legion. So it's pretty exciting that you have us on to talk about that. I was fortunate enough to come in and be Phil's assistant coach, and right after college, and I didn't think about coaching. I had a business degree, but I thought if I was Phil asked me to be his assistant, and I didn't hesitate because I knew I'd get some batting practice and be ready for summer league baseball. That's what got me started. And then a year later, Phil was doing 2 full-time jobs, and it just was near impossible. So he asked if I'd be interested in taking it over. And I, had 9 years there at Garrett. And
back up for 1 second, Lawrence, because this is what's amazing. You started your first year as head coach at Garrett. You're 23 years old. I mean, that's incredible to think about, the fact that you're 23 and all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, I know I'm only like 2 or 3 years older than you, but here we go.
Absolutely, man. Well, there was actually Brian Gray, boy from Cumberland, was a year or 2 older than me. So we had some of that going on too, but it was unbelievable. When you talked to us about having this opportunity, I went back and looked at some pictures. I found a picture of Brian Gray. I found some crazy pictures that Eric will love on what the facility looked like. It was okay in 72, 73 when Fierno started it, but it's come a long way.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. It's when you think about, because I want to get to Ed next, is when you think about what, Phil started there back after, Fierno, and then it had that little bit of a break, and then he comes in, right man, right time, right? I mean, I'm a big believer in that. So he's right person for the job. Then you take over that program. Then Ed comes in after you. And, Ed, one of the things that was a big difference maker was we talk about the growth of the program is the dormitory, right? I mean, that's at Garrett Hall. That's a big deal. For you guys to all of a sudden have a place where these players can live, instead of when I'm there, you're going out. I mean, some people are living in the basement of people's homes, or, you were bunking up at we had a pretty nice setup, but you know what I mean? That had to be a big difference maker, right, Ed?
That was tremendous for those dorms to be added when I came, and excuse me, it just added another layer of accountability for those kids, because we had a head of residence who was also my assistant. So not every player was in the dorm, but I would say the majority were there. So there was a careful, watchful eye on them. that was a tremendous recruiting tool, especially for parents. When those parents would hear that the assistant coach was living full time in the dorm with the players, they climbed all over that. They loved that, and so yeah, the dorms that was a major selling point, and the partnership with the dorm was privately owned at the time. I think the college owns them now, but at the time it was privately owned. And Ron Wendell was a sweetheart. He would do anything for us. And part of the partnership that we had to work with Ron was upfront money for the dorm. And for those kids, those players, those families to be able to swing the money without, like a lot of kids, they're late getting their student loan paper and FAFSA in. And so the money's coming late. And again, it's a private business. It is privately owned. It's not linked to the college. So there's where it gets tough with financial aid and working with the financial aid office. Anyway, Ron Wendell was very good about letting those kids move in without any money up front. Wow. As they wait for their financial aid to come in. So that, that's a part that a lot of people don't see. And, dorms are big.
No, that's awesome. And then, of course, and heck, we could spend 2 hours just talking about every one of your all stops and the accolades, but I definitely want to get to some of the, mindset stuff and some of the culture stuff we had planned on talking about with you guys. So, Ed, you were there from 1994 through 2003, and then, and again, really took that program. I like one of the things that you said in an interview was that you took pride in getting players to the next level. And I think that's a credit to all of you coaches that are on the line with us. Is just what a good, you talk about the professional players that have come out of Garrett College. But more importantly, the list would be limitless if you start talking about just the colleges that have benefited from, you all being there for 2 years and those players being at Garrett for 2 years and then them going on to 4-year schools, getting their education. And that's a big thing. So Eric came in 2003, and Eric, you had, this is one of those things where you had been at Frostburg State, you're helping out different, programs. You've been around, you've been doing some stuff with Cal Ripken baseball and some of those things. Talk about, if you would, just kind of, because you are still the coach at Garrett College today. Talk about, if you would.
Now the AD.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really cool thing. Talk about just kind of what that experience, what do you remember about them coming to you and saying, hey, there's an opportunity up here at Garrett College to take over the program?
Well, I got the job in fall of 2004. Lee Bradley got the job in the fall of 2003, and then he was there for the spring of 2004. Actually, it was him and I that were the two candidates, and they picked Lee that first year, and he was only there a year. So then I applied for the job the next year, and actually Cliff Everett, who Ed was talking about as far as running the Red Sox and whatnot, he was on the search committee. He's like, are we going to do this again? Here's a guy that wants to be here, that's been here. Are we going to, I guess they had somebody from Tennessee that they were looking at or whatnot. And he's like, we can do this every year if you want to, but this is the guy. So 17 years later, this is where I'm at. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing. I could hear Cliff saying that too.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So he had my back on that one. Yeah. For sure.
Well, and you talk about facilities, Eric. I know, we talked about the dormitory, but, the hitting facility, that was a big deal. Like there's been all these stages along the way that as the program from, definitely 1980 when Phil was there. I can't even imagine, Phil, for you to come back and see, and you had an opportunity to do that as an assistant coach a while back. But, just thinking about all of you all, just going back and looking at the program now and where it is facility wise and everything compared to what it was in 1980 has got to be pretty remarkable.
Well, Garrett hosted the state semifinals in high school baseball this year. It was, Eric's son played on the Northern team that was in the semifinals for the state. And you're sitting there, you go, this is a beautiful place to place a state semifinal. You know, years ago when these guys played for me, that's a dream that we would think. Now we go, beautiful scoreboard, and Eddie was paramount in using open space money to get lighting there, scoreboard there, improve the dugouts that needed improvement, press box. So each one along the way made it a very special place right now. When you drive up to Garrett and you say, this is a nice place to play, we're not talking about the weather yet, but you drive in right now, who would not want to go there? I mean, I would go there, I'd go there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. John, go ahead, Ed.
I need to share a story. Yeah. And thank you, Phil, for those years that I had quite a bit of support with the county commissioners for open space money. We replaced the 4-foot fence with 8-foot fence in the outfield and along the lines, and we did all that. But tell you a quick story. We were working at the height of the field when I was there. We were having a baseball camp, and Phil was working it. And as the kids were getting loose, it was in the morning. I was standing there with Phil, and we were talking, and he was looking at the field, and all around it. He goes, Eddie, he said, if you were here's what he said. He said, Eddie, with this field like this, if you were 2 states south, you'd be nationally ranked. Wow. And I thought that was the funniest thing when he said that, and yet at the same time, quite a compliment for that. Yeah. But I just want to throw that in.
No, it's true. Look, I mean, the setting is beautiful. If Phil brought it up, so we'll go ahead and talk about this. So for the listeners, so Garrett County, Maryland is in the western part of the state. It is in a elevation that's pretty high. It's in a snow belt. There is, you've got Wisp Ski Resort there. You've got all of these different things. And it's what do they call it? It's like this 4-season, kind of playground, right? I mean, you've got the snow, you've got in the summertime, Deep Creek Lake there. What are some of those challenges that you guys had in the, just from over the years? Because of course, the one thing everybody thinks about when you think of Garrett County is snow, but each one of you guys have been able to be very successful with that program. So what was the key? What were some challenges besides the weather? And how did you embrace it? Maybe that was just one of those things you got to feel like, instead of fighting this, we might as well just embrace it.
Phil mentioned the biggest point is, number one, you do your recruiting in the summertime.
Right. That's right.
I mean, there's women everywhere. There's boats going. It's beautiful, but if you stand in right field, I can remember, there was one season that I played there. Well, first of all, I guess to really, it was all exemplified in the best when there was a 39-inch snowstorm, and it followed it up 2 days later with 31 inches. Now, they kept the roads closed on the first snowfall, but the second one, because if you're standing in right field, if you look beyond the hitter, you actually see the ski slopes. And I remember playing games when they were having Winterfest.
Yeah.
And they were serious about Winterfest. They weren't pushing the envelope. It was wintertime. One year we played 4 home games there the entire year. We played 8 games that same year at CCAC South in Pittsburgh. So, it's a challenge. When you saying it was at the beginning, John, you said it's a little cold in Garrett County. That's like a little bit of hair on the head.
Yeah.
It's a lot cold up there.
Well, I know Coach Hallenbeck heard this story last week, so he gets to hear it again. To your point, John, it was second or third year I embraced the weather.
Yeah.
And it was the start of the season, and I talked to the guys, and, the thought hit me, here's what we're going to do. I told them, I said, we're going to be the Green Bay Packers. We're going to embrace this weather. We're going to make it miserable for the other team visiting when they come in. We're going to be used to it. If it's snowing, so what? Here we go, boys. Yeah. So no longer after I preached that to the guys. We talked about it. Never forget, we'd always sit in the middle of the gym on the center court, half court. So I told them that. So we're playing Charles. That's the next team up. And Charles comes to town, and they had a really good team. So they pull in their two vans, and it's spitting snow. And I could hear their kids complaining from the get-go. And it's like, Coach, what are we doing here? Let's go home. So after 2 5-inning games, we swept them, 10-run roll. They couldn't wait to get in their vans and head back.
Yeah.
So, to what you were saying, that's what we did. We knew what we had going on. We knew what we were going to be facing, and you didn't try and shy from it or hide from it, because it is what it is. And we tried to use it to our advantage as best we could. And it did work at times. Yeah.
Hadn't gotten any better, has it, Eric? The weather's still the cold winters, right?
Well, I got smart. We take 2 trips to Myrtle Beach in March. So we make a home game until we get back in the end of March.
That is smart. Yeah, that's one of those things. That's a veteran move there.
That's better than the trips that we took to
all points somewhere south.
Harrisonburg, Virginia. Oh man, our stories could just go on and on and on. We were hoping that we can make those happen, but Eric's talking about 2 trips to Myrtle Beach, man. We never even dreamed of that. Caruso, one thing that needs to be said, because I shared the same salary, and it's not about the money. We all coach because we love the game. But I mentioned Phil was doing 2 full-time jobs, but his second full-time job at Garrett paid a cool, handsome $1,700.
Here's my first one went out on me.
Oh man. Yeah, so I had 1 year at that, and then I was fortunate. Another big name in Garrett baseball is that never stepped foot on the diamond as a player, but John Culp was an administrator when I was there. And matter of fact, I wish I could find the picture of the time that we had the field was on fire. Not that we were playing that well, but it was literally on fire because I'd burned it with gasoline to try to get it to dry. And John Culp, I got called into the administrator's office the next working day, and John looked at me and said, "What can we do to where you're not, burning 100 gallons of gasoline on the field over the weekend?" And I said, "A tarp. We have to have a tarp." So John made that happen. It showed up, and that was one of the first things that was to an advantage for the baseball program. And that list of things that Ed's done, and then to see Eric's team in the finals, final 3, right, in the region this past year, man, in a very competitive, good region that was loaded with players. And there's always been good players in the league. So we're very blessed. But that's one common thread is the weather. So we all got a story that we could go on and on about. John, what years did you play there?
91 and 92.
All right.
So I was there when we got the tarp. I remember trying to, if I'm not mistaken, I should say, but I remember the little nuance was that if you were, I don't know if it's still this way, because I don't even think they still have the paper mill open in Luke, but I just remember if you could smell the paper mill up on the mountain, man, get ready, go get your milk, your bread, whatever you need to do, because it is getting ready to get really nasty. I mean, that was just always, it was like if you were at practice and all of a sudden you smelt that, you were like, oh man, we might not have, we won't have school for like an hour, because that's the problem with being in Garrett County is they're so good at clearing the roads. They are like pros at it. So it's very rare that you don't have school. I mean, they will find a way to get you there, So Brandon, you had something?
I did. So with all you guys here, it's great to hear the stories, but is there a common thread? So you all seem very similar, right? As an outsider kind of looking in, how has Garrett been so successful in kind of keeping the culture where it is, and the common thread that kind of runs through all of you all?
That's a great question. I'll go first. The 5 years I was there, I tried to turn the culture around that we can win, that this is a good stepping stone to take this program to another level. When I handed off to Lawrence, and then Lawrence to Ed, they took it to another level. They brought in some incredible, talented people. I mean, first of all, two guys I'm talking to right now are very talented, play for me, and they played with some talented people also. But when they went on to college themselves and then came back to coach, Ed is homegrown. He's from Garrett County. Okay, that's number one. So see, when Brandon, you're talking about the culture and the toughness it takes to play at Garrett. Not everyone can play at Garrett, and some people go home. Okay, let's call that what it is, because it is not a place that if you're going to come here, you have to be. We all talk about the grit playing baseball. There's a grit to playing at Garrett. But when you come to Garrett and you played 2 full seasons there, and you ask those guys right now, had you had to do it over again, would you come back? Everyone said they would. Everyone I talked to, not one said that was the worst place I ever came to. I wish I didn't go there. Everyone said I had a wonderful time there. The relationship with the players I had, the teachers there in small college, they got to know me. The people in the community got to know me, including the police force, from some of the players from police force. But in reality, though, they all love their experience at Garrett. They did, and they hold it dear to them whether they went on to play after Garrett or not, like you did, John. You know, and you played at a high level.
Yeah.
And I guess in when a lot of people saw that guys are getting drafted and signed out of Garrett, they knew, the region knew that Garrett has to be dealt with every year. That this is not the culture that these guys developed. They brought incredible talent in. I mean, Lawrence can tell you, Mike Nagel was the first player ever drafted out of Garrett, ever. And his son was in the Valley League, thanks to Lawrence this year, who's the MVP of the Valley League 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So here's a tie of a guy who got drafted from Atlanta Braves out of Garrett, and from that point on, Lawrence brought some people in that got signed after Garrett. So did Eddie. 2 guys for Eddie told the Major League Mound. Again. So all of a sudden, Garrett is known by name now, not just the cold weather.
Right.
There's a culture up there to develop players to go on to play at the 4-year level, or possibly at a pro level. So when you get that type of notoriety, you get to draw players. When people tell me, I'll say it's cold up there. They said, you want to win? You want to be developed? I will say this really quickly, because like Lawrence says, there's so many things we could add here. I was the head coach at Fairmont until this year. When the kids were struggling academically, socially, maturity, or athletically, I all sent them to Garrett. I said, you're not ready for me. We're Division II. This is a little more. I'm going to send you to Garrett. Everyone who went to Garrett all came back and loved their experience there. Mm-hmm. Everyone. Wow. And so if I had an opportunity to load up his team with Fairmont players, I did it. It benefited him and benefited the kids. Number one, it benefited the kids. Some of those kids came back to Fairmont, and some kids went elsewhere. So that's fine. You're helping kids. And I think the beauty of a junior college here, and Brandon, I know what you played at a high level also. I played at junior college. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I know the value that what Garrett has to offer a kid. There is a toughness to play at Garrett. Part of your broadcast, your podcast is the mental toughness of athletes. And if you don't have it, I used to tell kids, then don't come there. Just don't come here. One of my recruiting tools I use at Fairmont And, when I was trying to build that program, I said, you want a winning program? Go to Shepherd. They're winning already. That's Coca-Cola. Go to Coca-Cola right now. You want to be a part of something special, knocked off Shepherd? Come to us. Guess what? I got a lot of people that way. Yeah. And so that's the same thing that I did with Garrett. At the time, Pot State pulled their program, and the Allegheny was the lethal team that was nationally ranked. We beat them. We had a party all week. We beat them.
Yeah, it's shut school down.
That's where the cops got to meet everybody on the team. I got you.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's funny, Phil, because I think you hit on something here, and I'm just looking at the four of you guys and thinking there's a commonality among all four of you. You're blue collar. That's that approach that they get it honest. The players get it honest because that's the type of players that each one of you guys, the gritty, just scrapping, clawing, doing whatever it takes. One of the challenges I've always kind of thought about this, and while I have you guys on here, I wanted to ask you is, you talked about maturity. You're talking about a freshman and sophomore. You're talking about the first 2 years of college. For a lot of these players, they're young. By the time you're getting some of that young youthfulness kind of out of them, and you've started to develop them, like y'all were just talking about, it's time to move on. I mean, how did you all handle that? Yeah. That's tough. Like, you finally kind of develop them, and it's like you almost got to strike while the iron's hot there for those 2 years because
you break that horse, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you finally broke him in, and he's off to greener pastures.
Yeah.
I've used that line still. And, when I'm talking to a recruit, I did 9 years at Garrett. And again, if you listen to Phil, you understand, a common thread for all of us. Cause, all the other three of us besides Phil, we follow the same format of creating that culture based on their academics, based on their social behavior, and then their athletic commitment. And the bottom line, you get the type of kids that want to be there. And because we're the scholarship money, I hope Eric's making a little bit more money than Phil made. I had that same salary the first year.
Well, he's the AD. He gets to decide how much money he makes.
Oh, yeah. I hope it's big, brother. You deserve it. But the bottom line is, that's the culture that was created. And I think, Eddie, did a great job after me. But, and Phil, I have the benefit of looking back at some history that I found, just before our call. And there was three other players from Fierno's era that signed professionally. Mark Deutsch, Ron Whitfield, who made it up to AAA, Ron Kaufman, and then, of course, you mentioned Nagel. Timmy McLaughlin was a guy that signed out of there. I was fortunate enough to I think I had 8 guys that were either drafted or signed. Wow. And, Ed had 2 guys that went on and played in the big leagues, man. That's awesome. And, like I said, Eric's taken the program to new heights beyond. And I think one of the warmest things, and I've coached now 38 years of college baseball and excited about doing it again next year and hopefully a few more. But one of the highlights for me over the last few years was watching Eric and hearing Eric's success and knowing that shortly after the game, he one of the first things he did was text Ed and Phil and I, the success that he's having and wanting to win that championship and allowing us to be a part of it still. Yep. So, I think you find the common thread. And again, Coach Fierno was a great coach, did great things there, had some great players. And he had great success when he was the athletic director, not to put any pressure on you, Eric.
Ed?
Well, and Phil touched on everything that I was going to speak to. It's a small school, it's a caring faculty, it's a small community. Everything that he went to, that's what I was going to bring up. Beyond that, I think the level of trust between the coaches through the years and the scouts and the 4-year schools. I guess what makes me think of this, we talk about the 2 kids I was fortunate enough that they moved on and did play in the majors. But Mike Johnston was a left-handed pitcher, and he was from Philadelphia, and he got his GED, and because he had Tourette's, and he was, at the time he played in the majors, he was only the second major league player ever to play major leagues to have Tourette's. So he was bullied.
Oh, wow.
And so he quit. He got out, and he was working at the airport in Philadelphia. So I get this call at 2:00 in the morning from this scout. And he said, Eddie, get this kid, get him now. And I said, Hicksy, it's 2:00 in the morning. And you all know Hicksy. And I said, Hicksy, it's 2:00 in the morning. He said, Eddie, I don't care. You go get him now. So I tell that story as an example. It wasn't just Hicksy. And I know all these coaches sitting here have that same partnership and trust with those scouts. Those scouts, they're putting their name on the line when they recommend a school. And when they recommend Garrett, they're putting their name out there. So they got to be confident that the coach is what it should be like. And so yeah, I think, obviously the classroom is the biggest thing. That by far is the biggest thing. The faculty is the biggest thing. And those kids feeling wanted and part of the community, that's bigger than what I just spoke of. But I want to put a bow on this and say that, another part of it is that trust with the scouts and the 4-year head coaches.
I think it's interesting too, guys, because to listen to you and we all know and can respect the level of coach. You mentioned it, grit or grind or whatever you want to call it, right? And I think that what it sounds like to me is that there is a culture there that you all have established and developed. That, to your point, Ed, when I'm going to get a Garrett kid, I know that he's going to be able to, if he commits and he wants to continue to play, I know I've got a kid that I can at least count on for the next, 2 to 3 years. He's not going anywhere. He's got the work ethic. He's got the determination, and he's got the baseball IQ to continue at another level. And I think it speaks volumes for you all, especially when you look at some of the stats. And John and I have talked about it before. I know when he and I were at Charleston, the stat that the NCAA had put out was that only 1 in 4 kids ever finished their eligibility. And they did not include, now at the time, you didn't have the one and dones in basketball. And, there were some time restraints, right? So it wasn't, it may be a little different now, but how many times, John, did we see kids that came in that washed out like that because they didn't know what it was going to take? And to have coaches like y'all instill that into a young athlete, student athlete at the time is invaluable. So, a tip of the hat to y'all. And I think, to your point, Ed, you guys drove that trust, right, by what you were instilling in those players. So it's awesome to, like I said, to kind of be an outsider looking in at a really tight community that did things the right way. So certainly tip of that.
And that's a great point and a nice segue into something I wanted to ask you, Eric. Being somebody who's been there as long as you have now, I mean, I have to imagine, to Brandon's point about, instilling that. We talk all the time about, coaches, and they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. How hard is it to develop that relationship in just a couple of years? I mean, you're only going to, like we talked about earlier, you've got them for that first year. I think they're probably, in some ways, it's good because I think your freshman year, you're a little bit more dependent on the coaching staff, from just you're leaving home for the first time and all of those challenges. What's that like for you, just trying to develop that relationship in an accelerated manner?
Well, I'm a hands-on guy. I mean, I want to know what's going on with them, not only baseball-wise, but also the academic side of it. Whether their high school girlfriend is missing them and giving them some flack for being away from home or whatnot. So you got to build that trust. Nowadays, it's both sides. You got to build that trust with them, and they got to build that trust with you. And you do that through just being accessible. Communicating with them, telling them that you're here, just not about the baseball side, but when I take guys on recruiting visits or whatnot, I just say, I'm like mom and dad. I can't help you unless I know what's going on. So right. I want to know what's going on. And it's worked. And when you're talking about the culture that we've built and whatnot, I listen to the story from Lawrence and Ed and Phil, and I mean, we are, it is blue collar, and Garrett is not for everybody. And I tell my recruits that. I said, if you're looking for the big city living, the club in, all that kind of stuff, this ain't it, man. Right. But if you're looking to go to school, work out and play ball and move on to bigger and better things, there's plenty of guys with the number of years that we've been playing baseball here that have had great experiences here. So it's just a matter of, it's a different type of kid nowadays, but if you just get to them, if you can get them, and you can build that, that mutual trust now, then it definitely helps. It helps them grow and mature. And I mean, when you get a Garrett guy, I mean, at a 4-year school, I mean, their transition is going to be very small because we throw everything but the kitchen sink at them. Right. Not only that, but also the weather and those type of things. And, it's fortunate enough because these 3 guys have paved the way for me as far as we've got better facilities. We're getting better support. Guys that played for them are sending me kids that are, playing for me now. So it's, when you've been it long as I have at Garrett in one place, you're getting help, and I love the college as well. So that's what's really helped me be successful in the last couple of years as far as that kind of stuff goes.
It's a great fraternity, if you will, that has been established over the years from that alumni network of just that. I mean, there's a lot of pride people take, as Phil mentioned earlier, in having played baseball at Garrett. And I think it's something you've continued to build and just the success you've had with the program. But I mean, you talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, I would send players. I mean, heck, I've sent, when I was coaching high school, sent a couple of kids up that way. I mean, you want to help that program. You always feel like that's the kind of the nest, where it all started. It's home base for so many. And so I think everybody is fully vested once they've been a part of that program. You're forever vested in just trying to help, continue that success. And I think that's one of the things too, that you talk about trust, and Brandon and I both lit up with this, is that, we talk to sports psychologists all the time, mental skills coaches at all different levels. And, one of the things they always talk about is how important it is for you to have players that really truly feel like they can trust coming to you and talking to you about the things they're dealing with. We're seeing this right now in sports where, people's mental game is being, it's kind of coming into hard times because, whether it's Simone Biles at the Olympics, there's so much pressure on these kids nowadays. I mean, you guys know this, being still involved in coaching these college athletes. There's so many things, social media, travel teams, and the expectation that, if you played 5 or 6 years of travel ball, you should go to college. You should get that D1 scholarship. There's all these things that are put on these players, and they sometimes don't have that outlet to be able to come to somebody, a coach that they feel like they can trust, and be able to say, hey coach, I'm struggling right now. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I can't get out of my own way.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt real quickly. I was very blessed one of my dual careers, I was a guidance counselor. And, when you have a guidance counselor mentality, the door is open. I think everyone on this podcast here has an open door policy, that a player can come in and feel the trust that they can open up to you about something that has nothing to do with baseball. And, and each one of us have experienced, I know Lawrence, he shared some things with me and things that I experienced in the last 6 years is like chapters you can write in books that people go, I can't believe that happened. Yes, it does happen. We're dealing with human beings. Yeah, and they do like to play baseball, but some of these people, starting at Garrett, you're you have cut the cord from your mom and dad, and who's the closest thing that you have that you can trust that's not a peer? That's your coach. If you're afraid to go to your coach,
right,
and you are afraid to open up to them, and I think that separates Garrett from a lot of programs. That I'm not going to mention any names, but my 6 years at Fairmont, if a kid can play, I send him to the best coach possible, not just the program. This guy is going to guide you way beyond baseball. Okay. Right. I got people in my field in Division II and Division I, they won't do that. If it's something that's not going to benefit them, they're not going to benefit another program, even though they could help a kid.
Right.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of programs that win. How do you win? Is it just by bigger, faster, stronger, or do you care about that kid? And I think, I can speak for all these guys right here. They embrace the fact that they care about everyone who plays for them way beyond even after they graduate, and the dialogue they have, even with you, John, right now.
Yeah.
I had to get to know you. I didn't coach you, but I know you very well.
Right.
And would I want you to come and get? Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guess what? Look what you have done, and it's not just a baseball thing. It's everything beyond and making this a better world, a better community.
Right.
And I think that's what I think a player that comes to us can share his fears that he has breaking away from mom and dad for the first time.
Yeah. Lawrence.
Just talking about you guys there being down there at College of Charleston, and made me think about Gary Gilmore at Coastal. He was at USC Aiken when I was coaching at Garrett. I sent him 8 guys down there, and just what Phil's talking about. I mean, most of the guys were either team leaders, team captains, or they were drafted professionally. I don't know what exactly the numbers are. I think it was 3 guys that we sent down there that got drafted professionally.
Wow.
But more so, all of them, I'm more proud of the fact that Bill Casella is named a team captain, and a guy that's a middle relief guy, but he had that character. And I think, again, that's in the big picture, that's what we're talking about. What you guys are doing with this Mental Advantage podcast, that's awesome. I'm telling recruits right now, one of the hottest fields, if they mention psychology, I get turned on, because I talk to them about, hey, something I coached so long that back in the day, they came to me and said they were going to hire a full-time athletic trainer. I said, are you kidding me? Why? Why would we need one of those? That's a waste of money. If it hurts, put ice on it. It's right. A doctor. But,
I tell you what's interesting, Coach. Go ahead. Sorry.
Now, they're going to need sports psychologists. That's something that's going to happen, and I think we're on the cusp of it right now. What you guys are doing is kind of just building on that momentum.
Yeah,
I think so. And if you hear one of the, and this is just something. If you hear a kid that talks about, I want to get into sports psychology, John and I have talked to enough people that is the kid that probably needs to lean into
psychology. That's right. Yeah.
Because everyone we've talked about, when we go, hey, what was there like a pivot point or something? They were like, I always just kind of wanted to do something that I felt I needed when I was a player.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so for them to be able to identify, like, I needed this outlet. If you're hearing that today, they're probably,
that's a great point.
That needs it.
Yeah. They say that now, even with psychiatrists and stuff too, that, you usually you got into it because of that.
Skip Urban.
Yeah.
Skip.
Now I will.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Coach.
Skip Urban is one of the, I guess, mentors for me when I went to conferences, Skip Urban. And when he's winning national championships back in the 90s, he just basically said, I was no better than Mississippi or Mississippi State. He said, what would separate us at the end and going to the World Series and win it was the mental part of it.
Yep.
And that's the part that I kind of mastered, the mental part of it. And many tips that he shared with me, I try to implement in my programs.
Absolutely.
Embrace it. And there's a lot of benefits it came out of Skip Berman. And when you are around people like that, because a lot of programs have talented players, but they never reach the level of the talent they had. And you come away and go, why didn't we have a better team, or why didn't we do as well as we should? Well, it's the mental aspect. And
no question.
If you can't bring it out as a coach, sometimes I'll tell you right now, the 2 pandemic years, I felt I failed as a coach. I personally felt I failed at Fairmont the last 2 years. I can blame it on the pandemic all I want, but other teams, they achieved through the pandemic. So I thought maybe it's time for me to step down. I'm not doing my job, because you don't blame it on the fact there's a pandemic going on. You find a way. You find a way. Yep. And I guess, the whole thing we're talking about, the coaches here from Garrett, we found a way through the winter and get to the spring and preparing our teams. When you talk about facilities, really quickly, we had drills in the hallway.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all we had. So I had to come up with creative drills in the hallway that's useful for the kids. We're not just wasting time to develop their skill level. So to me, like Skip Berman, hold on to those people. Don't, when a player said to me, Coach, I think maybe you should be more of contemporary. And contemporary, explain that to me. What's contemporary to you? Analytics?
Right.
I'll tell you, analytics. Get a guy from second to third and scoring him with less than 2 outs. That's analytics.
Right.
How do you want to do that? You want to have a launch ball to do it, or you got a guy down on first and still second, but in third and get him in on a fly ball. Don't tell him about analytics. We're all about analytics, okay? But the mental part of the game, to me, has been lost in this generation that I just stepped away from.
Absolutely.
I do not see it. Now, I'd be glad to see it, and I have some players, and I know Lawrence is still in the game. He's got some players, too, that they do get it. But as a whole of a 34 roster, how many gets it? No. It went from here to here. We're now going down.
It's all about, it's the old thing about, 90% mental, but we don't spend 90% of our time and practice and everything else on the mental game. But every coach will tell you it's 90% mental. It's about getting present moment focus. It's about, how do I get this player to quit thinking about those 3 ABs he's already had in the game and wear that into the next at bat, or how many pitches we're going to miss as an infielder because of the error that I just made, early in the inning. I mean, these are all things that if we can get that, and it's, Brandon and I have had a couple of guests on here that have talked about this idea. Mark Glacini comes to mind, who said, you might think it's all, kind of bogus, if you're a player and you're like, oh, that whole mental imagery and the whole visualization and
the whole, it's hippie and dippy.
Yeah. You may think it's all crazy until you run into that team who doesn't think it's crazy, because that team is the one that's going to beat you in the 9th inning. Because when you're in that clutch moment, that pressure situation, and you're thinking about the results and what might happen if we don't win this game, or what might happen if I don't get this hitter out, that's the guy that's going to lose, because the other guy who can sit there and literally focus on his breathing, stay in the moment, and just execute on a pitch in that moment's the one that's going to end up winning. And part of it, and I don't want to steer off of this, but I did want to touch on something that came up, is it's identity too. This is one of the things I think as these young athletes, we talked about the pressures they have, but too much is going on, I think, right now, where players are so consumed in this idea that they're a baseball player, a college baseball player. They got the uniform, they got the jacket, they got all that stuff, that when things start to go wrong and it starts to shatter a little bit and the foundation starts to crack, they're more worried that they're going to lose that identity, because they don't look at themselves as anything else. They don't see that they're more than that. And I think if you can do that as a coach, to the point Eric was making earlier, is when you start to establish that trust early on in that coach-player relationship, you're going to be so much further ahead of the game, because now they understand Eric's looking at that kid as a person who has a family, who lives in Preston County, West Virginia, whatever the case may be, he's not looking at him as his second baseman in that moment. So really big points there. Lawrence, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of notes there, what you were talking about, and again, I had the good fortune. I did 9 years at Garrett, 8 years at D&E, and then I did 7 years as an assistant with Cal Bailey. And you're just talking about the mental side of the game. I remember coming back from a regional, and we were, that was a great program, still is a great program. Sean Lloyd does a great job there. They just won the championship last year. Cal won 17 or 18, I think, in his tenure. We were coming back from a regional 1 year, and we were just talking about what do we have to do to get better? What are we lacking? And I was like, in the weight room. In the weight room right now, we're talking analytics. The weight room got hot there for a while. Was everybody has to be all jacked up.
Yep.
Cal was old school, man. He was, he played in AAA himself, and read a lot, and he was on the top of everything. But he kept it simple and that's what made him great, was the simplicity that he could bring to it. And he said, you guys are in the weight room. He said, if I'm out there hunting and I'm sitting there waiting for a deer to walk by and I'm thinking baseball, I'm getting better than you guys are in the weight room.
Yeah.
And that was his mentality. He believed in the mind is the strongest thing. I know a book he told me to read when I was a young coach was The Inner Game of Tennis. And you think about how quickly you have to get over it in tennis, get to that next shot. And, the golf is the same thing. That's where you see the sports psychologist. But, to your point of identity, he talked about that all the time. And that was getting his type of players. And I think, that's maybe why we have such a close bond with Eric, because we see, everything that Phil kind of laid out there as years ago. And Eddie, just took it to another level. And it's exciting to see what's going on there now, but also even in American Legion. So there is a culture in Garrett County, one of the coldest places in the world. If you've been there, you'll argue the point that they're still making it happen. So
yeah, no, it's a really good point. It's one of those things. And the other thing that when Eric was talking about those players and what to expect from a Garrett player, I think there's a beauty of a JUCO player in the fact that, when you're that freshman and sophomore and you're playing probably ahead of schedule, right? You go to a 4-year school, you may or may not be playing that freshman and sophomore year. You're having to be a leader on your team, which you're not expected to do that in a 4-year school. You have to, there's captains, there's sophomores that step up in a JUCO level that they never step up necessarily when they go to that 4-year school. But now all of a sudden, that kid that was forced to grow up a little bit faster, become a leader a little bit sooner, now that kid goes on to a 4-year school, and that's why they're such natural leaders when they get to those schools. That's why it's such a good. They've played, which you can't. There's no substitute for reps. They have played for 2 years and gotten a lot of ABs and a lot of ground ball chances and fly ball chances, and now all of a sudden they've developed that leadership piece of it and are going into that 4-year school, which that's why I'm such a big advocate. I feel like I'm selling Maryland JUCO should be sending me a check right now, but I feel like I'm selling.
Dude, you tried to get me to leave Charleston to go to Garrett. I was like, at some point, like, enough.
I'm here.
Now, listen, guys, part of it was because he and I played the same position. I knew he was just trying to get me the hell out, but I was like, dude, I'm not going to Garrett. Yeah, I seen you. I got it.
That was when you were a senior too, Brandon, right?
That's right.
That's it. He just wanted me to leave, period.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What so we're going to kind of be wrapping this up here because we've kept you guys longer. By the way, Eric, not to put any pressure on you, but as I'm doing research for this, Phil Caruso, Garrett College Hall of Fame, Lawrence Nesselrodt, Garrett College Hall of Fame, Ed Wildesen, Garrett College Hall of Fame. So, hey, there's one box there that needs to be checked.
Those guys promote themselves a lot better than what I
do. AD, right?
Fake it till you make it, right?
I will have this one story. This is for all of us, though. Is we're talking about grinders, and I mean that's the culture that we have at Garrett. But we made it to the final. Fortunately, made it to the Final Four back to back years, and we lost the first game in the Final Four, so we had to go to Catonsville. And before the game, it was like an hour and a half before the game or whatnot. Brian Farrell, who's the AD at Catonsville, is a good friend of mine and whatnot. We've known each other for years. He comes out to the field when I'm talking to Dan Blue. He's like, "Damn it, Eric." He's like, "One guy I don't want to see in an elimination game and one team I don't want to see in an elimination game, and that's you and Garrett College." And we end up
that's awesome.
And eliminating them for the season. So
I love hearing it. What guys, I can't thank you enough. I mean, we just got the tip of the iceberg here, but I mean, I definitely see just listening to the four of you, the culture thread, as Brandon pointed out, that's running through not only the program, and Eric's beneficiary of that now. And look, I say beneficiary, that would be discrediting the great work you've done over the last, 15, 16, 17 years. But the reality of it is there's such an ownership there that everybody who's played there has for the program. I think is really, really special. We talked about the grit and just what it takes to be there, inviting the challenge, so to speak. And then also just this idea that, I mean, you're going to go on to, we talk about embracing the suck, right? Or intentional discomfort, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations, all those things. Man, those weathers, those winters, all that stuff. Yeah, everybody is like, okay, that really is cold, as Lawrence said. But the reality of it is it teaches you that focus on the things you can control. We can sit here and bitch about the weather all we want. We can whine about the fact that it's cold today and that we're having to take in and out on the parking lot at times, which we had to do because the field was too, and Lawrence never, it wasn't like he eased up on fungos just because they were coming off of asphalt. But it was one of those things. But the reality, as I look back in this conversation, is just shined a light on this, is that it's such a character builder, man. I mean, that's what makes that college so special, is by the time you're out of there, you've dealt with all of the things that everybody looks at as an obstacle, but you've just embraced it and you keep on fighting through it. And then by the time it's over with, you're onto a 4-year school. I mean, heck, talk about a nice switch of scenery. I went from Garrett County, Maryland to Charleston, South Carolina. Wasn't too bad as far as the weather goes, right? But
nice contrast.
Yeah, a little bit of a contrast there. But I do think, just to kind of put a bow on this thing from a mental advantage standpoint, there's so many lessons from this conversation just about controlling what you can control and just, not getting caught up in all of the reasons why you can't do it. The goal stays the same, just adjust your plan sometimes. But at the end of the day, when you focus on things you can control and just put your head down and get after it. Now, what's the Ward Burton story, Lawrence, about I just keep driving till everybody quits?
Yeah. When you won the Daytona 500, they said, "How did you, an upset winner? Nobody expected you to win. How did you do it?" He said, "I just kept on driving till everybody else quit."
One of my favorites.
Yeah, you gotta keep driving. Hey, John, great job, man. You're a great alumnus of Garrett Community College, and we're proud of you and Brandon. Thank you guys for having us.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm blessed to finally be able to put a face to some names that I've heard so much about. And when y'all might be proud of him as an alumnus, but I can tell you, and it is all kidding aside, that guy right there loves Garrett. And the stories that I heard and continue to hear, he is a proud alumnus. So
absolutely. Well, lots to be proud of, guys. And thanks to you four men who made it happen. Phil kind of, picking up there where, the after that break in the action, and then all of a sudden Lawrence coming in and Ed, and now all the work that Eric has done. Can't thank you guys enough. Really appreciate you joining us.
One thing I want to read, if you're looking for a great book for any kids right now to read, Ego is the Enemy. Ego is the Enemy is one of the great books for a young athlete, baseball player to read. And if you can promote that, that is a great book, because there's a lot of about right here. A lot we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys so much, and take care. We'll see you at the alumni golf tournament or something like down the road.
Hey, when's that? Do I get an invite to that too?
Yes. Yeah, you're gonna get it. You're gonna want one of those lids. Let me tell you something. You'll want to hit Eric up for a lid because they got some nice lids now. I'm telling you.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, just let me know your size because we've graduated from like the one size fits all. We got fitted.
What? Get out. Look at you.
And Eric's not backing his car up there to use it as a backstop either. I can tell you that. those days are over. All right, men, we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.